Welcome back. I'm Dr. Christian von Lahr, and my guest today is Susan Miller. You know, when we left off, we were talking about this combination of sun signs and rising signs, and I was kind of curious if there was a timing element where one is more important than the other, because I was getting kind of confused when I was younger because my rising sign seemed more pertinent than my own sun sign.
You are unusual. Usually a child will begin exerting their rising sign as a teenager, maybe around 14 or 15, you start to see that come out. So they say babies and old people seem more like their sun sign, but you say it was a little bit the reverse.
Well, for example, I am a Scorpio, so we got that depth and the wisdom and the investigation that you mentioned in a lot of your works. But the Sagittarius makes me very exciting, very outgoing, very curious, want to do everything.
That's the philosopher in you.
Yeah, you know?
Oh, that makes total
so,
sense. Were you that way when you were little? Were you?
No, see, I was extremely shy. I wouldn't speak to anybody. Totally introverted.
But that's Scorpio. Scorpio wants to be by themselves,
right.
you know, and think and work
Yeah,
things
always
out.
very methodical.
Yeah, even if you have a Scorpio child, they don't want homework buddies. They tend to want to close the door to their room and get their homework done. And
gosh, that's
you know,
true. I usually
yeah.
I have a twin, you know, and we had like bunk beds. And
Oh.
I would just crawl in my little cave and steady. That's what I did.
Yeah, and if you have a Libra child, they need play dates all the time, and they do better, you know, bouncing ideas.
So the conclusion here is that for most people, I'm a little bit unusual, there is a particular time where the rising sign is more significant?
Well, I think, see, also the rising sign predicts the profession, and you have Sag rising, and Sag rules the dissemination of information, also the taking in. The great student is Sagittarius too. The opposite side, Gemini, collects the information, and then Sag makes sense of it and codifies it so that it is accessible.
Now codify, that's the word we Scorpios like, right?
Well, and you put it in the libraries of the
Right.
world so that people of all ages and all nationalities and religions can get access to it.
And I've always wanted to make sense of things, no puzzle unsolved.
And philosophize by it. You know, what does this all mean? You know, let's step back and see the big picture.
This is a perfect opening for the main topic of this segment. I'm a lecturer on 2012, and we have a lot of programs on Messenger, and we have an opportunity here to talk to an astrologer. The ancients, such as the Mayans, were often looking to the skies and recording alignments, much of what you do. But we find when we look into ancient wisdom that there were things going on out in the stars too. And they may have been looking at the center of the galaxy, which also has its own cycle of 26,000 years. And there were these supernovas going off. For example, in the constellation of Argos, which Jason and the Argonaut, which is now Pipus, there was a star that burst and went supernova. Then there was another one that went supernova in front of it. So you get all these color patterns creating this dragon effect, which is that Quetzalcoatl also that the Mayans spoke of. And because of that bright supernova going off, you have that Ouroboros, or the head eating the tail. But what's interesting is on the other side of the world, where the Egyptians are also speaking of 2012, in this new, and the records are in this area called the Labyrinth, underwater right now, but we've discovered it, we're about to prove this. They came up with the 2012 date, and they were looking at Sirius, another constellation, that also went double supernova. So, since the ancient cultures also say these bright stars represented Messiah's coming, which is part of what 2012 was about. And in Christianity, you know, there's something important about that date, I assume, because the wise men were looking for that star of Bethlehem. Do we have a cosmic thing going on here too? Is it just with, you know, there's a cosmic with a C and cosmic with a K when we speak of an ancient wisdom. You tend to come from the K part, I think, the solar system. And I also think in that C, something out in the universe. Can we bring these together in any way?
Well, there's so much here. We feel the center of our solar system is 26 degrees Sagittarius.
Okay.
And the Earth somehow has moved into the center of the Milky Way. And that is what is triggering this whole discussion about 2012. What does it mean? Where is it going in?
Right.
And I don't know why all the doomsday stuff came up as you know, because I don't see that at all.
Right.
Not astrologically. There's no aspect there that we haven't seen before, and we know that God doesn't give us anything that we can't cope with.
So you're not seeing doomsday
No.
prophecies in the charts you do.
No, none.
Okay, now I'm going to give you a perspective you're going to find interesting. Okay, this is an advantage of studying the ancient wisdom because it really is a consciousness concept. When the Mayans and ancient cultures were speaking of things like end times or calamities, fire, destroyed by water, they're referring to the state of consciousness because man goes through an emotional astral state, which is water. And as you rise, we no longer need that matter, so that matter gets destroyed by water.
Yeah.
We go through a consciousness stage, which is a Lemurian, which was fire. So eventually, as we went to that Atlantean age, we had to lose the fire matter in existence.
Oh, that's interesting.
And that's in 2012, from a philosophical point of view, is we're actually supposed to be reconnecting with all of these other stages. The Lemurian, the Atlantean, our current ego-oriented thinking aspect of man, and bringing them all together, making sense. So do the charts indicate any kind of wisdom or enlightenment or latent potential?
Always, yes.
Okay.
You're always advancing. You're always learning. Well,
Right.
you mentioned before that the Earth was in the age of Aquarius.
Yes,
It was
right.
in the age of Pisces. It goes in a retrograde motion all the way around the
Interesting,
belt.
age of Pisces, when it was the birth of
Religion.
Christianity.
Yes.
Right.
And now we're in the information age, which
Yeah.
I feel personally, and no one agrees, no astrologer agrees with each other.
Yeah.
It's like the blind man and the elephant. Everyone has a different idea of when the age of Aquarius started. I feel when the Sputnik went up, that was it. It just changed everything.
Now, aren't these ages relative to the cycling of our own galaxy?
Yeah, it
26,000
is.
years?
Yeah,
Okay.
and the Earth going backwards.
The equinoxes and things like
yeah,
that. Right?
it stays in for thousands upon thousands
But
of
that
years.
does fit into the ancient wisdom that we're speaking of. Now, one of the things that's interesting is when you do it from a philosophical point of view, they never were mentioning end dates.
Okay.
Okay, even though in modern interpretations, with a limited perspective, we think the Mayan count is about an end. But we speak of this level in many ages, and they were always looking for the midpoint when consciousness or man changed. For example, if we go back to the last one, Atlantean times, and we correspond it to 2012, man used to be androgynous, one sex. And so the corresponding date of 2012 here, back then, is when we divided into two sexes.
Oh wow!
Okay.
So this should be a
Yeah.
really exciting
So,
change now.
so 2012 here is when we've gone through the densest, hardest lessons of existence, and so now we can unify all those past lives, and we can start a lighter existence, less dense, less hard lessons. So it's an acknowledgement we've actually
Wow.
accomplished something. So they were. This is why they were so happy about 2012. We've gone through the hardest part. It's a chance to be enlightened. It's a way of saying we've actually made it. We've accomplished something.
Yeah.
And so I'm thinking somewhere in those charts, there must be that latent potential, or we did something good, or there's something to look forward to.
Well, you mentioned midpoint in astrology. That's a very powerful word because astrologers use bell curves.
Okay.
And let's say you have two planets here, and the midpoint is right here. That's considered a very powerful point because it's exerting equal energy both
Okay.
ways. So we often look at all the midpoints in a chart, and when Mars or a planet goes over that midpoint, that's a trigger for change and enlightenment. And you're saying, yeah, actually, your
How about
whole
transformation?
perspective, yes,
Transformation, okay,
yes.
got it. Okay.
So if this is a midpoint, this
So
is
I
going
love
to
that
be
it starts fitting
interesting.
into the ancient wisdom too.
Yeah.
And I think that's the way it should work. If astrology actually is viable, and you can feel that it should fit into what we call the ancient wisdom, which is since the dawn of time, innate in man, we should be able to see, sense, and note these things. And we should be able to look out in the cosmos, K or C, and see an order or a pattern.
Oh,
That
yeah.
order and pattern is like the concept God geometrizes, okay? Isn't that what we're taking advantage
Well,
of?
yeah, the
That there's
closer you
order?
come to math, the closer you come to God.
Is math
Yeah.
a genius thing too, by the way? Something consistent enough that we can always rely on it?
Oh, absolutely. The universe is built on mathematics. Yeah.
Okay.
It runs on time too.
Because
It's
we
amazing.
also find in basically ancient wisdom, the universe is built like on scales of 7, which is also the genius in music, and 7's a pattern in everything. Those things that are extremely high spiritual are the triangle, which are 3,
Right.
unmanifested, the divine, and here in the physical it's a 4 square.
Right.
Things that are solid, we're learning the coordinates of the earth, air, water, fire.
Right.
And eventually we're trying to bring all those together. When we come back, we're going to pursue this subject further, because I know Susan's got a lot to say about this, and let's talk about a few other interesting things that I think people haven't learned about you, the wisdom you have that we want to share that we haven't been putting in the books, whatever. A meaning behind ancient things, ancient planets, configurations, shrines. We want to learn some of those secrets when we come back on Messenger.